This is our Chapter 2, Basic Teaching Skills for the Career Education Instructor. What we're going to be talking about in this chapter is we're going to be talking about the teaching plan and the learning environment. One of the critical concepts of this particular chapter is that the master educator, which you know that's what we are, is that we know things that begin well will end well. So we need to make sure that we come out with our dynamic openings. Some of our desired goals that we're shooting for with this chapter is to list the benefits of effective organization and teacher preparation. A teacher who's prepared is a teacher who's going to hit her goal. We're going to state the goals of our classroom arrangement. We're going to talk about different ways to do it and different things that we wish that we can accomplish with it. We're going to talk about the chevron, which is a very popular concept. We're going to talk about the U-shape. We're going to talk about the circle. We're going to talk about all those different kinds of things. We're going to talk about performing the administrative tasks that are required by our educator and also by some of our regulatory agencies. As a master educator, we're going to make sure not only are we prepared and organized, but that we're prepared and organized for actual part of our class. It's part of getting class started. It's part of making sure that we're ready before class ever begins. We're going to ensure that our classrooms are safe. All the while, we've got to be motivating. We've got to make sure everything is conducive to learning, because we know that everything we do is for the maximum benefit of who? It's for the maximum benefit of the student. Educator, as an ability, one of the things that you need is you need to be able to lead and inspire your students. You've got to create the positive learning environment. And the way that we create that positive learning environment, we all know it's going to come from setting things up from a positive standpoint. It's positive reinforcement. It's positive setup. It's positive delivery. We're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to provide pathways of success. We're going to facilitate learning. We're going to organize the environment, and we are going to be very careful in that planning. A teacher, when we organize and we get prepared, is the main thing that we have to know is we have got to be content grounded. We have to know our subject matter. Going out and faking it till you make it is not a good trait of a teacher. We say that sometimes in jest, but believe me, we don't mean that. We have to be prepared. We have to know our content. As a teacher, you're going to know your content, but it's equally important that you know the current trends. You can't just be a teacher in the cosmetology industry or in the beauty industry. You have to be a leader with the trends. You have to know what's there. You have to be able to teach to the trends. You have to be trendy yourself. You have to know your student body size. If I have a class of 5 or I have a class of 25, there's a big difference. I have to know that body size before I can actually plan and be effective. I've got to plan my activities, and I have to know how to plan my activities. Guess where that comes from? It comes from my student body size. Once I go in and I make that preparation, you know what? There's one final step that I have, and that is I have to identify my materials. Once I identify my materials, what kind of equipment am I going to need in order to make that happen? When I identify all of that and I start to understand my student body, we have to allot our class time. We have to know how many minutes are we going to do for each segment or for each module so that at the end of the day we've got completion. We have to allow for appropriate office time. There's bookwork that has to be done as a teacher. There's things that we have to do as far as record keeping is concerned, and we have to build that time into our day. We have to set up effective records management. We have to go in and we have to plan those records. We have to be able to make sure everything that we do is confidential. We have to plan daily activities. You can't let it just be whatever, because whatever will never make. You have to plan those out daily. We have to maintain our current skill level, and we have to make sure that our knowledge is strong and keen and sharp. And you know what? Maximize our budget. Every teacher works off of a budget. It's something that instructors do. And we need to help our students be able to work off budgets. So we have to lead by that example, and we have to maximize that budget. We have to organize our educational aids and our resources that we're going to use. We have to develop them. We have to, when you get into teaching class, one of the things that we know that we have to have is we have to have handouts. So we need to develop, and the key word here is professional handouts. You need to develop those handouts to where it's something that's very conducive to whatever it is that you're teaching for that day. We have to review our course materials and our resources. We have to create the welcoming, safe environment. We all know the importance of that safe environment. When people are safe, they can learn. We have to create checklist. That's how we do our checks and balances to make sure that we have everything we need. And we have to establish the tone and the expectation for our students. We have to copy our material, whether we're going to do that electronically or whether we're going to actually do it hard copy. We have to go in and we have to copy that material, and we have to have that material ready. And the key to that is that material has to be ready before class ever gets started. Once we're finished with that material, we need to file it properly so that we have it for future reference. We have to file our trade journals. We have to arrange our references and our resource books. We have to schedule that office time. We have to create support systems among the faculty so that we make sure that what we're doing helps to support everyone else. As teachers, as facilitators, as instructors, one of the things that we know that we need is to know our students. We need to organize their information. We have to be able to create a student file. When we create that student file, what we're looking for is a way to record that student's progress. This is something that for some schools, the teacher doesn't do it, but in other schools they do. We have to be able to document student contacts. And what we mean by that is that anytime I have a conversation with a student, I need to document that, whether that be in a computer system or whether it's as simple as documenting those conversations on a spiral notebook. But document the conversations. Anything that happens, it's very important. We have to be very successful in our organization of our files and folders. We have to know what works best for us, and we have to make that work. Once we get all of our tools and materials, all of those different things organized, what we have to do is now we have to look within our environment. In this chapter, we're going to talk heavily about the environment. One more time, I'm going to say it has to be comfortable and it has to be safe. It's that critical that we need to repeat that information. We have to make sure our area is well ventilated. Not only does it need to be well ventilated, we have to have proper lighting. All of these things come into play in order to deliver a successful message. Our equipment, does it operate safely? It's huge. You need to ask yourself that question. Does it operate safely? Your appropriate storage and cleanup, do you have that? What do you need to get that? Your educator desk and your educator work area, I don't know. Is it clean? If it's not, it needs to be. You've got to set the example in order to get the results that you're looking for within the student body. And the student body's looking at you to get the results that they need from you. You have to, when you're talking about your environment, you have to think about your student demographics. You have to think about your adult learning characteristics. They're there, and they do make a difference in what you do. You have to think about that physical classroom. And you know what? One of the most important things that you need is you need classroom setup in the way of seating arrangements. A classroom setup makes you or breaks you. And we're going to talk about some of those in just a little bit. Adult learning characteristics that you need to be familiar with is an adult learner, they're very goal-oriented. Most adults, not all, but most adults come in with a goal and they're very focused on it. We have to take in consideration that they have ingrained habits already. They're not students learning new habits and things about life. They've already got the life experience. It's called adult education. So they're going to come to us with those habits already. And one of those is they're going to have an opinion already formed about educational experiences. If they had a rough time in high school, they may come into our environment thinking it's going to be every bit as rough. And maybe they come in with a wall put up, and we have to get around that wall. We have to understand that past educational experiences are going to be one of the things that's going to be from the very beginning. It's our job as teachers to help break down those kind of things. And if it's a positive experience, it's our job to make sure the positive education experience continues for that student. Students are going to have established opinions. We are not here to convince them of what their opinion is. What their opinion is what their opinion's going to be. We are not here to put our opinion on them. They have them already. So they're going to come in, they've already got their established opinions, they've already got their habits, they've already got their past educational experience, they're already goal-oriented. Now we have to be aware that they've got a relationship to prior knowledge. When we put that into the mix, what we do is we use that relationship to the prior knowledge that they have in order to package that in the form of connectors. We can relate to the prior knowledge to enhance the current knowledge. Another thing that we need is we need to be very keenly aware that in adult learners, they need to be involved. Adult learners aren't just going to sit back and let it become just a teacher-centered class. It needs to be student-centered. They need to be in there. They need the do. It's the doing that helps them to learn. When we're thinking about our classroom, we have to know age range. A student that's 65 will not respond the same way a student who's 17 or 18 will respond. So we have to be able to know those demographics. We need to know what their culture is. We need to know their national origin. We have to understand it. The different national origins have different ways of doing things, and we need to be aware so that we don't inadvertently do anything that would be considered offensive to them. You know, our female and our male students, their reactions to things are different. So we need to know our female to male ratio. All of these things come into play whenever we're setting up and getting prepared for our class. We also need to know if there's any unique interests or hobbies that any of our students has, because if a student has a very unique or very interesting hobby, it can be very easy to take some of that language and some of that things that they do and actually use it for connectors in class and take what you're currently teaching and help to relate that over, and it'll enhance that experience for not only you, the teacher, but it will for that student who has that hobby, but it'll also be a mind-opening experience for the rest of the people in your class. Once we get to know our students, we need to do a personal profile on them. And when I say personal profile, what I'm talking about is as an individual. We're going to get to know them as a group. Now let's get to know them as an individual. And one way that we can get to know them and they can get to know each other is we can put them in teams and we can do some brainstorming sessions. Have them brainstorm. In the process of the brainstorming, we can listen to what's happening. They'll be in their teams and they'll be learning, but we'll be listening, observing. We'll be getting information about them as well. When we talk about the physical environment, and guys, I'm telling you this is important, we have to know what our room size is, our acoustics. The way that I would deliver a lesson with my voice could be different in a room that's got really great acoustics as compared to one that doesn't. So acoustics come in. We're back again to talking about lighting, ventilation, windows. Windows can be distractors. Do we have a lot of windows? Do those windows have blinds on them? You know, audio-visual aids. What's in that room as far as audio-visual aids are concerned? And what do we need to bring into the room as far as audio and visual aids are concerned? And seating. Is there enough seating? What kind of seating? Does the seating allow for them to have a table? Does it allow for them to have a desk? All those different kinds of things. So we're going to take that into consideration, but now we have to put it in the mixing pot and we have to mix that and make it a very motivating classroom. For a classroom to be motivating, you've got to vary the way that you deliver. It's your voice. You've got to vary your delivery techniques, but you also have to vary activities. If every single day all I did was just keep coming back in over and over again and we do the same thing at the same time, it gets mundane, it gets kind of boring, and you have to be able to throw something in there that they're not expecting in order to create that environment of varied stimuli. It's huge. It's huge. Try Take it out and actually try that out. We have to have a motivating classroom that suits the needs of the teacher, because you've got to be able to be comfortable in your classroom environment, but it has to meet your students' needs. It's not just about you, the instructor. It's about the student. Everything we do, what is it for? It's for the maximum benefit of the student. Our motivating classroom, our equipment can be motivating. We need to make sure that we don't have distractions. Do we have auditory or visual distractions? If we do, how do we minimize those? We have to make sure that there's a clear view of our learners for us, because that's how we read our learners, so that we know when it's time to vary activity. But they also have to be able to see us. So we need to have a two-way communication, not only verbally, but visually. We have to make sure that all materials that we're going to reference, that they're accessible to the students. And it is our job to create the excitement in that environment. When we talk about the design of the classroom, where are you? Are you present? Educator has got to be in a classroom, or it is not a classroom. You've got to arrive early. The success of your day can be as simple as, did you greet your students when you walked in the door? Did you win them at hello, or did you lose them at hello? Pre-assigned seating. You know, what does your seating look like? Are you going to do pre-assigned seating? Learning activities. Are they scheduled? Are they on the board? Do they know your plan? Motivational posters. Do you have them up in the room? Are you doing things on that area and that aspect that's going to promote the positive environment? Bulletin boards. What do your bulletin boards look like? Are your papers straight? Is the information on your boards, are they actually relevant to the subject that you're teaching? We as educators, we understand color. We understand the use of color in our industry, but color in our classroom can make a big difference. Did you know that if you have a lot of pale yellow in your room, did you know that that color, pale yellow, and almond colors, that color spectrum, it creates a very non-irritating response in people. Pale pink or a light rose color, that color is very soothing. So think of a spa. Think of some place that's soothing. Green makes people feel secure. The color green sparks creativity. Blue is a color that we use for relaxation. It creates tranquility. It actually helps the body secrete tranquilizing hormones, and it's the color blue. Orange agitates learners. So do we want to paint our walls orange? No. Bright yellow actually will excite the brain, and it actually excites the body. So if I'm going to go in and I want to do some activity and create a lot of excitement, I don't know. Maybe holding a yellow marker in my hand, maybe wearing a yellow pen, maybe doing something where some bright yellow is on my body in some way can help to excite the learners. Now we're going to talk about some seating arrangements. When we get into seating arrangements, there's several of them. They're all effective, but some are more effective than others. One of the seating arrangements, and this just happens to be my favorite, and it's the U-shaped or the horseshoe. If you've been in a lot of my trainings, you know that that's the one that I usually prefer. It's very effective if you're in a room of 15 or less. It gives everybody a front row seat. It's something that helps the educator to have good eye contact. Everyone can see. The educator can move the room, work the room. But it does need to be, for a classroom, your smaller classroom, let's say 15 or less. You also have the circle, where everything's in a circle, educators in the middle. This one is good for, say, students of 15 or more. You can do more than that. The more people you put into that circle, the less effective it becomes. So let's just say, for the sake of this video and for the sake of test and for the sake of your actual testing, 15 would be our magic number. Here's the thing with the circle. The circle gives the instructor a high level of control. It gives good eye contact. The instructor does have to keep working the circle. Another one that we have is our boardroom. Our boardroom is more of a square where everybody is around, which you can see. In the boardroom setup, that's only going to give me a medium level of control. And one of the reasons why it does is because it gives me limited eye contact. We also have our semicircle. Our semicircle is good for about 10. 10 is usually the limit on a semicircle, and it gives me a high level of control. I have a high level classroom control when I'm in that semicircle. Another arrangement that we have, and this one's actually the most common one that you see in schools, and it's called the classroom setup. But you know what? The reality is we use it a lot, but it's not the most effective. So it's common, but not effective. It's effective, but it's not the most effective. It's good for, like, if you're going to use lectures. It's good for larger classes. It's not necessarily good for demonstrations because you've got some people who are all the way to the back. One of the most popular ones that we have for getting people in, and it's the movement of the tables, where the tables are all moving in towards the V, and it's called the chevron. And if I use the chevron where my tables are all angled in, it gives me, the educator, really good eye contact. The more eye contact I have, the better my delivery will be, the more effective I'll be. It doesn't really give me a high level of control in my classroom. It gives me a medium level of control, but it is an effective setup to use. Another one that we have is our theater setup. When we get into our theater setup, it creates very poor eye contact because of the way the chairs or the tables are set up, and it's the whole design of the room. It's very good for lecture, it's very good for demonstration and for video, but it creates very poor eye contact for the instructor to have with the student. So that's where it results down into that medium classroom control. We have our amphitheater. That one creates a high level of control. Probably it's on the higher end of the spectrum. It only creates a medium eye contact, and that is because of the design, how far you are away from your students. But I could actually use my amphitheater. I could use that for my lectures, my demos, my videos. I would be very, very successful with that. We also have another one, and it's your half rounds. It's your round table set into a half round formation. Most of the time, you'll hear people call it half rounds, but you may actually hear this one called a cabaret set. This one is very, very popular, like convention settings, the different things like that. It's popular, and one of the reasons why is because the level of eye control that you can have with everybody that's there is high. It's probably the one that has the highest level of eye control. It does, though, because of the way the setting is, as the instructor, you only have a medium sense of classroom control, but you can make that up with your high level of eye control. It's excellent for demo, it's excellent for lecture, and for doing video presentation. So those are some of your classroom setups that you can pick and choose amongst those, but always make sure that you choose the one that's best for the activity that you're going to be doing that day and for the demographics of your students. Sometimes when we're setting up our practical classroom, what we have to do is we have to make sure that we take into account that some of our students have special needs with being able to access everything. And we need to make sure that our lab stations are good. We need to make sure that our equipment's good. We need to make sure that our supplies are gathered and that they're there. We need to always work, when it comes to that practical classroom, underneath the guidelines of all the policies and the procedures that your school system has in play, but also your regulatory agencies. What is it that they need to do? How do they need to do it? And what is the standard? One of the ways that you can make sure that you always have your classroom prepared, you can develop a facilities checklist. And it's where you just go in and you create the list of all the things that you need to house my lighting, house my ventilation, and you can go in, and as you do those things, you just check it off. And that way you make sure that everything's covered before you ever get started. So we've talked about classroom setup, we've talked about being organized, we've talked about being prepared. We've talked about actual table formations. We've talked about all of those things. So now what we need to talk about is we need to talk about teaching materials. When you go into a classroom and you're going to be teaching to the students, you have to make sure that the material that you're using is relevant. Don't take your students off course by using old material or material that's outdated or it's not even on subject matter. Make sure everything is relevant to the subject that you're teaching that day. You have to make sure that your teaching materials will actually reach your student at their level of learning. Maybe they're not to an advanced stage, so don't bring in the advanced material. Bring it in for where they are in their learning. You have to make sure it's timely. Again, make sure it's in date. Make sure it's not so futuristic that it's not believable. You have to make sure that the author and the publisher is actually credible. If you're going to use that to develop tests with, or if you're going to use that as your basic of this is how it is, you better really make sure it really is true. So you have to make sure that your author and your publisher has credibility. Your organization and your layout of your materials is crucial. The information that you have on your board, your flip charts, all of those different things, make sure that that layout is good and it's conducive to the end result. You know, make sure that you have a textbook evaluation checklist to make sure that everything gets covered. Administrative responsibilities, you know, for some teachers this is the part they don't like. But you know what? It's very much a part of what we do. It's all the things that have to take place in order to make the student experience complete. We have to be able to do all the things that we need to do in order to help them secure financial aid if they have financial aid, to help them get, you know, just everything that they need. Our job, our responsibility. And part of that comes from keeping accurate records. Some schools have big systems, like we talked earlier, where they keep everything in the system. Other schools don't. Maybe they're still more manually with pen and paper. Doesn't matter as long as those records are completely accurate. We have to make sure that attendance is taken, that not only do students come to school, but it's recorded, and it's recorded properly. We have grade records. We give the test, we grade the test, we have to store those test records. That's what makes up a student's academic grade. That's what makes them satisfactory, all of those different things. When students fall below on their academics, we have to go in and do those academic advisements. We have to make sure that not only do we do them properly, and then we store those properly. We need to always make sure we do student surveys. Student surveys are something that will keep you on track. Student surveys will give you the feedback. You know, people sometimes think it's negative. Student surveys are positive. They give you what you need to make you a better teacher, or they reinforce what you already know. You are a good teacher. There's advisory councils, what advisory councils are, and this is something that regulatory actually make sure that you have in place. An advisory council is where you go out into salons, industry leaders who come into your school and they look at your process, they look at your materials, and they give you feedback for what does the industry need from the student, that they get that from the school, and as far as how is the kit, is the shears that come in the kit, are they of quality? Do they come out with the skill level that they need? What is it that they need to do to be employable? Our job is to make them employable. So our advisory council gives us the feedback to help us make that happen. We have to do continuing education. You stop learning as an educator, sorry, you're no longer an educator, because an educator can't teach what an educator doesn't know. So it's highly important that you keep up with your continuing education. You know, we've talked about all the things when they're in class, but let's go back and talk about orientation. You've got to welcome those new students on that first day of school, and you've got to set the stage. You're setting the stage, you're setting the expectation. They know what to expect. They know what's coming their way. You inform them of your plan. They know about their plan. It sets the tone, it sets the mood for their entire schooling. we have got to go in on that first day, and what we have to do is we will establish our rapport with our students right then. They're going to size you up just like you're going to size them up. We have to review our standard. You know what? You can't expect a student to live up to your standard if you haven't established your standard. So you need to establish it. What is your expectation? What's their expectation of you, the teacher? You need to introduce your course. Introduce it. This is what we're going to be teaching you. This is what I'm going to give you. You've got to clarify those course goals. And you've got to answer questions, but more importantly, you have to let the student know very first day, day one, that you're there to teach them. And not only are you there to teach them, but that you will teach them. So let's kind of go in and let's kind of wrap up our chapter 2. What we talked about is we talked about preparation and organization and how key it is that we do it prior, keyword, prior to our class start. Educators, we have got to stay current on our knowledge, and we've got to stay current on our trends. We have to make sure everything we do is relevant to our field of study. We have to develop our work habits, and we have to, above all, make sure that our classrooms are safe, that they're inviting, and that they are motivating. So guys, this actually wraps up our chapter 2. Thank you very much for being a part of my class today.